Hi everyone, Uncle Nacki here. Today I'm going to show you some more ungraded T206 cards I have from my collection. This is part 3. I'm going to try to keep this in hopefully an 8-part series for the ungraded portion. I'll probably be going over some of the basics as I've gone through in the previous episodes, but just in case you haven't seen the first and second part, I'll go over some of the basics. So these were issued from 1909 to 1911. There's 524 cards in the base set. They come with multiple advertisement backs, 16 total different backs, and then you have variations from there. Some of them have subject numbers and factory numbers that bring that 16 different to somewhere around 38 or 39, depending on which ones you count. This one here is an old mill back, and this particular card's a little bit more difficult to get because it's from the print group 1 portion of the set that was came out in early of 1909, and they were just not printed as much as some of the other cards in the old mill part of the set. This is a Conroy. This one here, he's got a couple versions of his card. One he's got a bat. This one he's fielding. So some of the players have more than one pose. Other ones just have the single pose. This one here is a Piedmont 350. Piedmont 350 backs are considered the most common in the set as far as front back combinations, but there are a group of Piedmont 350s known as the Elite 11 that are much more difficult, but otherwise a majority of the Piedmont 350s are pretty basic, or what we would call a common card, as long as it's not like a high-profile Hall of Famer in the front. This card would be considered somewhat of a common card. This card here has some variations that you can look for on his hat. Some of the cards don't show the stitching on his hat. Some do. So that's something that some of the beginners out there can look around and get a maybe some less common variations that really don't cost a whole lot more money, because it's just just isn't a big deal to many of the T206 collectors, even though some of them are more difficult to come by. This one's a Piedmont 150. Still pretty common. It still falls in the range of the 350 series as far as being considered a common card. Some people will tell you there's no such thing as a common T206, but there actually is. It's just the pricing for a common T206 is usually around $20 starting, and that would be considered a common card price. This one here is a polar bear back. There's actually 250 different cards that have this back. So some people collect just a subset of one particular back, and then every card that comes with that back. In this particular back, there's 250 different cards. This was issued in scrap tobacco, so a lot of times the polar bear backs will have tobacco stains on them. This is Ed Willett. He's got a couple cards. His other one is Willett's with an S at the end. And this is the red back card. This is a less common back, very collectible. Many of the cards that have this back are extremely difficult to come by. Some are, there's only one or two, known, or, one or two that show up in the population reports. So, to put this particular subset together, compared to, say, a polar bear back set, the polar bear back set is, doable with some time and some money. This particular back, even if you have the money, you may not find every single card that you need, just because they either don't exist or they just haven't been found yet. And that's one of the things that makes this set interesting to collect. Here's another Conroy, just like the other one that we had, and we'll take a look. So you've got cards that have the same exact fronts, but the backs are different. Some people will collect these cards where they have all the same fronts with all the different possible back combinations. And it gets pretty impressive because some of these cards will have, over 20 different cards. So, it's quite a project, but when it's completed, it's pretty impressive. And that last one was Old Mill back, also from the Print Group 1 series, a little more difficult to come by. This one here's a Sovereign 350. Sovereigns, they came in a 150 subject, 350 subject, and a 460 subject. 350 subject is the most common of the three, and the 350 subjects came in two different colors of ink. This one here is considered like a forest green or a dark green, and the other one is considered an apple green or a light green. And they don't swap, the certain cards don't swap, both backs, so you don't have to collect two of each card. So this card front will always come with the dark green back. And the same thing goes for the light green. If you have a light green Sovereign 350, it's only going to show up that way on that particular card front, so you don't have to get two of each. This is Myers, another Sovereign 350. This is the dark green. And we got another Myers here. So as you can see, they've come with this one actually is different. He's got different spellings. That's one of the other things with this set. And sometimes they don't bother to correct it. They've only corrected one particular card that had a spelling error. The other ones, they just kind of let it go and they fixed it, in the next, part of the set that they made, since this set, spanned over a 3-year period. And this here's the Sovereign 460 subjects. So you can see the difference here, 350 subject and a 460. The 460s are a little more difficult to come by. There's 52 of these in this particular subset of 460 subjects. So there's only 52 cards that you would have to collect to get a complete 460 subject subset. 6 of those cards are extremely difficult. So just because there's only 52 needed for the set, and it's not that high of a number, it is a very difficult set to complete. I'm currently at 50 out of 52, and I've been at that number for a few years now. So just to give you an idea of how difficult some of those cards are. They just either don't come up, and if they do, they're extremely expensive. Joe Lake, he's actually got 3 cards in the set. There's him with St. Louis without a ball in his hand. Then there's one St. Louis with a ball in his hand, and then he's also has one for the New York Islanders. This one here is American Beauty cigarettes, 350 subjects. This one doesn't have a frame. There's also a 350 subjects that has a frame around it. So you have 350 subject with the frames, 350 subject without, such as this one, and then you have a 460 subject that doesn't have a frame. None of the 460 subjects have a frame. The most common for the American Beauty is the 350 subject with frame. And this one here, as you can see, this is actually an American Beauty with the frame, 350 subject. Even though you can't see that it says 350 subject, just because you can see the frame, the scroll work around the edges, you just know that it's automatically a 350 subject with frame, since that was the only subject that came with the frame. Usually I don't buy cards that are in this rough a shape unless it's a difficult card with this front back combination, or I got it at a really good price, and it's just kind of like a placeholder for this particular card front and back until a nicer one comes along at the right price. Sometimes certain cards in this set you can't be picky. There's another Old Mill back. And another Old Mill back. If you haven't checked out my other video on the Old Mill blue ink card, definitely check that out. It's basically this, looks like the same back as this, except it's got a bluish kind of ink. Before the one I found, there's only been one other one that's been discovered. And another Old Mill. Old Mill back is, another one of those difficult subsets to collect. There's some extremely difficult ones, like I had mentioned before. The Print Group 1 cards are extremely difficult, and then there's a set of 12 in the later part of the 1911 series of the set that are extremely difficult to come by. So if you're looking for a difficult task, it'd definitely be something to attempt. And it's got a lot of creases on this card, but with this front and this back combination, like I said again, you can't be picky sometimes. Here's the American Beauty back, 350 subject with the frame, so you can see the frame around the edge. So anytime you see that, even if you don't see the 350 subject, you automatically know it's a 350 subject American Beauty back. And these cards are normally a little bit thinner left to right, and many believe that's because the packs that they were inserted into were actually thinner than the other brands of cigarettes that they were put into. And these were put into the packs of cigarettes as just like a stiffening board to kind of protect them. They were never really meant to be a collector's item like they are today. You know, it kind of happened by accident. There's a different one. It's a Cycle Cigarettes. Cycle Cigarettes, they came only in a 350 subject and a 460 subject. The 460s are a lot more difficult, but the 350s are also, you know, very collectible and difficult to come by. Some are, you know, very rare and hard to get. So another fun subset to go after if you want somewhat of a challenge. And again, you know, creased cards, but on these, you know, sometimes, you know, if you collect the cards like I do, you know, where you collect the front back combinations, you kind of have to take what you get. It's, you know, otherwise, you know, if I was putting a set together and they were all the common Piedmont 350 backs and 150 backs, you know, it would, you know, I'd have many more cards to choose from, and, you know, I'd be able to get, you know, nice crease-free cards, nicely centered, and still be, you know, within budget. But because I collect a front-back combination, and, you know, we're looking at anywhere from 5,200 to maybe 5,300 different combinations. So there's a lot of cards in the, you know, in the set. We don't really know exactly how many. Kind of have, you know, somewhat of an idea, but you just never know. You know, just when you think something doesn't exist, it shows up. So McIntyre, he's got a couple different poses also. This here, sweet caporal back, 350 subject, and then you can see on the bottom there, factory 25. This card here, this card back, you know, has many different combinations. You know, they have as far as subjects, they have a 150 subject, 350 subject, and then a 350 460 subject. And for the 150s, they have factory 25, they have a factory 30, and then they have a factory 649 overprint. And then the 350s have a factory 25, factory 30, and then the 460s have a factory 25, factory 30, factory 42, and then a factory 42 overprint. You know, collecting, you know, this card back, you know, there's so many subsets within this card back just because of, you know, all those different combinations. So some of them are, you know, much harder to get. Some are very common. You know, something common would be like the 350 subject with a factory 30. That would be considered a more common back. The 350 subject with a factory 25, such as this one, little more difficult. You know, I would say, you know, on average, population reports would probably have factory 25s maybe at 20%, you know, of the total population, you know, between factory 25 and factory 30. So it just makes it a little bit more of a difficult card, and I tend to, you know, pick up the more difficult ones and save the real common ones that are always available, you know, for my last purchases. So if you're, you know, in the middle of trying to decide what card to buy, you know, rarity should always play a role in that. And that's basically how I, you know, when I started collecting these cards, that's how I would, you know, rate what I was going to bid on or buy each night. You know, I would make a sheet of what cards, you know, had, you know, less common backs, and then I would go on the population reports on PSA and SGC, and I'd write the numbers down, you know, next to each of the cards on my list, and then total those numbers up and put them in order based on, you know, what cards had the lowest population, and I would make my decision as to what I would bid aggressively on or buy, based on those numbers. And I did that for quite a few years until you eventually you get a majority of the more inexpensive cards, and then you get to a point where I'm at now, where it's everything is just pricey. So I still look at the population numbers, but it really doesn't play as much of a factor anymore. Here's another factory 25. And another factory 25. So as you can see, I tend to try to get the ones that are lower population numbers, and I recommend anybody that's even going to start this set, just with a little bit of looking at the numbers on the population report, you'd be surprised how nice of a card you can pick up at a fairly low price, or a price that's in line with the most common cards, and you end up having a card that only has say a population of less than 10 cards. Compare that to cards nowadays. Look at the Ken Griffey Jr. Upper Deck from 1989. I don't even know how many. Last I knew, there was well over 10,000 graded cards. I think in a PSA 10. It was just, the number was insane. It was just when you see numbers like that, kind of makes you wonder why a card is has any sort of value. And then when you look up say one of these cards with a certain combination, and you got population numbers in the single digits, and the pricing on them is less than the Ken Griffey. I kind of get it, but at the same time, I look at this as a long-term investment plus an adventure in collecting. But you don't want to lose all your money on a hobby. You want to at least be able to recover some, if not all, or even more. And with this particular set, you're pretty good chance of recovering more than what you put in. If you're buying newer cards, they're fun and everything, but they're not going to have the longevity that everybody thinks. There's another Sovereign 350 with a dark green. Now, many people will say that the T206s are very common. There's a ton of them on eBay all the time, and there actually is. It's probably one of the most common pre-war cards out there. But then again, like I said, you check those population reports, and you'll see why those numbers are the way they are. There are very common cards in the set, but then again, there are other ones that are very difficult to come by. So there's hidden gems in that total number. So don't let the the numbers scare you on eBay, and you believe what everybody else is saying, where these are common, and there's maybe a million or so of these cards still in existence. It really doesn't matter too much because the ones that matter, the cards that are, out there that you're going to need, they just don't fall into that same category. If you're putting together a basic set, minus, the more difficult cards, you would be looking at a 518 card set. And, you could build that set only, doing just, Piedmont backs, and that's where the higher population numbers come into play. So you could probably do a bunch of those sets over time, with the right kind of money. But when you factor in the advertisement backs and all the different combinations, and some of them either being non-existent or only having one out there, that's where these go from being supposedly extremely common cards to extremely difficult cards. There's another Factory 25, and that's why I don't normally purchase any of the more common ones, just because there's a bunch of them out there. So anytime I'm searching for a card, I may look past 40 of the same card with some of the more common front back combinations before I find that one combination that I'm looking for. So sometimes it's 1 in 40, sometimes it's 1 in 50. So when you look at that that search result number, and you eliminate all the reprint cards and everything else, and you factor in the rarity, and say on average you're looking for one card, you have to weed out 50 of the same card, that search result number diminishes quickly, based on those types of numbers. So that's something to think about. So for every 1,000 cards, there's really only 20 cards. If you're at a 1 to 50 odds, so 10,000 cards, and you're only keeping an eye on 200 of them. So don't let the numbers fool you. Study those population reports. You can learn a lot. Here's a Sovereign 150 back. Sovereign 150s and Sovereign 450s are a little more difficult. The Sovereign 350 is more common. And, recently the Sovereign 150s have actually been going up in price, just because, collectors are, realizing that, just how much more uncommon cards are with this particular back, compared to other backs. And, it's, kind of causing the prices to go up a bit. Here's a card here. It's in really rough shape, but like I said, actually the next couple cards are in pretty rough shape. But again, Sovereign 150, and just because it's pretty rough looking like this, still very collectible with this card back. Now, if this, we had the same card but with a Piedmont 150, then you'd be looking at a $15 to $20 card. But in this, scenario, that's not the case. Let's see, Charlie Star, same thing. American Beauty, 350 subjects with the frame. So, if this was a Piedmont 350, it'd be like a $15 to $20 card. But because it has this back, you know, it just puts it into a whole nother level. And what's this one? It's kind of difficult to see. Maybe it's a factory 30. I'm not really sure. Sometimes I get these cards. You know, somebody's selling a few in a group. You know, and I'm only interested in one. I may get you know, a more common card that I normally wouldn't purchase. This card here, if you look at the top and the bottom, you can see the top kind of goes uphill, and then the bottom kind of you know, goes downhill. What they call that is a diamond cut, and basically all that is when these were produced and they were, you know, in sheets and the sheets were stacked, when the blade would cut through the sheets, you know, what they were doing first was they were cutting them this way first, and they had, you know, a lot of sheet material to hold everything in place when they would clamp it down and the blade would slice through it. But then they were left with these very thin strips, and then they had to cut the cards this way, and what would happen is there was just less area for that clamp to clamp down to. So as the blade would cut through, it would cause the pile to kind of shift a little bit and turn a little bit, and that's when you would get that diamond cut. And that was, yeah, we already talked about the back there. So if you're, you know, looking at a card and it looks like it may have been trimmed, you want to look at both the top and bottom and see and make sure that they follow the same sort of pattern, you know, with a diamond cut. And here's a polar bear back. There's a nice group of collectors out there that actually collect these polar bear backs. They've been reaching out to me since I started these videos, and you know, it's just it's a fun back to collect. And you know, I always say to everyone, you know, you can start with this back. You know, there's only 250 cards in this subset, and you know, by the time you complete the subset of 250 cards, you can continue on from there, you know, in the T206 set with either another back, or you could just start collecting the rest of the cards with, you know, different combinations of backs, because once you're done with this subset, you're literally almost halfway done with the, you know, the basic set of 524 cards. So, you know, this is a nice way to get started in the set, and you know, have that, you know, fun of, you know, searching out each card. You know, I always say the, you know, the hunt and the adventure, you know, to find each card that you need is the most fun part of it. You know, once you have it, you know, it's the fun is over. But with this particular T206 set, you know, the fun never ends, because you can just continue on. You finish the polar bear back, and then you can, you know, jump into, you know, maybe Cycle cigarettes or American Beauty, and you know, keep adding, you know, to that set, and you know, see how far you can get to, you know, 524 cards, and then before you know it, you may start buying you know, cards that have the same card fronts with different card backs, and then, you know, it just keeps going. You know, so it's definitely a set and a collection that you'll never get bored with. And that's, you know, one of the main reasons why I collect this set, because I've collected many things and have finished, you know, many sets, and then once they're finished, it's, you know, the fun is over. You kind of enjoy it, you know, your completed set for a few days or a week or so, and then you kind of lose interest in it. And here's a Sovereign 150. And this one here, you know, it's missing paper there, but you can kind of tell sometimes what it is because the the numbers are different. And if I had to tell you what that was, it's hard to tell on this one, but I would say this is probably a Sovereign 350 back, because the Sovereign 150s, the numbers are just a little bit larger. So the zero has a more of an oval look, and then on this one it's more rounded. Another polar bear back. On this one you can see the tobacco stains, and that's considered normal. If you were to get this, send this in to say PSA or SGC, especially PSA, normally if your card has some sort of a stain, or a mark on it, they will put a qualifier on the label. With these cards with the tobacco stains, they will not, put a qualifier on there, because it's considered normal. So, it would just be graded based on the condition of the card. Another tobacco, scrap tobacco card. This one's a little cleaner. The cleaner they are, obviously the more valuable they're going to be, because they're just harder to come by. And the last card for today, another polar bear. You'll see probably, like I said, a lot of polar bears within my collection, just because I have almost a complete set. I have currently 245 out of 250 of them. The last 5, they're not really difficult. They're just some of the more expensive ones. One of them being the Thai cob with the red background. Just because it's expensive doesn't mean it's rare. There's a ton of them. Well, I don't want to say a ton of them, but there's a lot of them out there. So it's just waiting for the right one to come along at the right price. I pretty much have all the difficult polar bear backs, so I'm just kind of waiting on those last 5, and not really in any hurry either, because since I collect all the different front back combinations, I'm always bouncing around from, you kind of get a hooked on one topic for maybe a month or 2, and then you kind of get a little bored with that. You jump to another one, and over time you accumulate a decent collection. So one of the nice things about collecting these cards, it's hard to lose interest, because there's just so many different ways to collect them. And if you get bored with polar bear backs, you jump to another one, and you get back, bored with that, you jump back to polar bear. All right, so that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I appreciate it if you subscribe. It encourages me to make more videos. If you have any questions, you can always leave them in the comments section. I try to get back to everybody. And like I say, I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys soon. Thanks for watching.